Ancient wisdom from a Roman emperor reminds us that letting go isn't about losing control, but about mastering ourselves. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher king, teaches that clinging to things, whether possessions, status, or even anger, only chains us to suffering. When we learn the art of release, we reclaim peace and clarity amid life's chaos. Today, we'll explore how his timeless insights can help us let go of what weighs us down, guiding us toward a quieter mind and a stronger spirit. If you're searching for practical ways to face life's inevitable changes, this journey into Aurelius's teachings might just be what you need. The Stoic foundations of letting go in Marcus Aurelius's philosophy. Marcus Aurelius approached the concept of letting go through the lens of Stoic philosophy, emphasizing that true strength comes from mastering oneself rather than external circumstances. Central to his worldview was the idea that much of human suffering stems from attachment to transient things, possessions, reputation, even loved ones, things that are ultimately outside our control. By recognizing this fundamental truth, Aurelius believed we could cultivate a mindset that allows us to release undue attachment and accept life's ups and downs with equanimity. For him, letting go is not a sign of weakness, but an act of wisdom, an acknowledgement that clinging to impermanent things only leads to frustration and despair. One of the core Stoic principles Aurelius champions is the distinction between what we can control and what we cannot. This dichotomy demands a kind of mental discipline. We should focus our energy on our own thoughts, actions, and judgments, rather than on external events that lie beyond our reach. As Aurelius put it, the universe is like a vast, interconnected system where everything happens as it must. Our task is to accept this flow and not resist it. Letting go, then, becomes a matter of aligning oneself with nature's course, understanding that attachment to outcomes or material possessions is futile. This mindset alleviates the inner turmoil that often accompanies loss or change. Reflecting on Aurelius's writings reveals that he often used mindfulness and rational reflection as tools to detach from emotional upheavals. When faced with adversity or the loss of something dear, he would remind himself that these external things do not define his worth or inner peace. In his meditations, he advises finding tranquility by focusing on one's own character and responses, rather than external factors. For example, when contemplating the death of loved ones or the fleeting nature of fame, Aurelius learned to accept these realities by reaffirming that our judgments about these events shape our experience, not the events themselves. This internal work of releasing attachment allows for a serene acceptance that strengthens resilience. Moreover, Marcus Aurelius's Stoic approach to letting go advocates for a practical, daily application, rather than an abstract ideal. He teaches that by practicing voluntary hardship, such as enduring discomfort or practicing detachment from petty desires, you reinforce the mental habit of non-attachment. This discipline creates a tranquil mind that does not oscillate wildly with external chaos. Over time, this steady state becomes a default, enabling one to face losses, setbacks, or the inevitable changes of life with calmness and clarity. Ultimately, Aurelius's philosophy marries moral virtue with mental resilience, showing that letting go is an act rooted in moral strength and a profound understanding of the natural order. Understanding attachment and control in the Roman context. Roman society placed immense value on self-control, duty, and acceptance of the natural order, ideas that are deeply embedded in Marcus Aurelius's philosophical outlook. In an era where political power and public image could determine a person's legacy, attachment to personal ambitions or material success often led to unrest and suffering. Marcus recognized that holding tightly to external possessions, reputation, or even certain outcomes was akin to grasping at shadows, an exercise that only fueled frustration and disappointment. For him, the key lay in understanding that much of life is beyond personal control, and relinquishing attachment to these transient aspects is a form of moral strength. In the Roman world, control was often linked to virtue. The Stoic philosophy that Marcus embraced emphasized mastering one's own mind and emotions rather than external circumstances. For example, Roman leaders frequently faced unpredictable political shifts, military setbacks, or betrayals, yet their reputation depended not on avoiding conflict, but but on how they responded. Marcus's own reflections reveal a belief that true control resides within the individual's mental state. In a time when the empire was vast and complicated, this perspective provided the moral grounding necessary to navigate chaos without losing inner peace. It was about aligning oneself with nature's order, accepting what cannot be changed, and working on what one can influence, namely, one's character and reactions. Understanding attachment and control in this context also meant recognizing the futility of resisting the natural flow of life. Romans valued resilience, not through stubbornness, but through acceptance. Marcus's writings often touch on the idea that everything personal and external is fleeting and that clinging to anything material or relational leads only to suffering. A Roman citizen might have been expected to serve the state diligently, but never to become attached to the recognition or praise that might come with it. Instead, loyalty was rooted in duty and virtue. Such detachments helped Romans meet their mortality with equanimity, viewing life's ups and downs as part of a larger, divine order that one could align with by letting go of personal attachments. What emerges from Marcus Aurelius's stance is a clear example of how embracing acceptance and reducing attachment isn't about neglect or apathy, but about cultivating a profound sense of inner freedom. When he writes about controlling passions and desires, he's advocating a form of self-mastery that recognizes external factors as outside our influence, but internal responses as within reach. In practical terms, this meant dealing with loss, disappointment, or frustration without turning these feelings into despair. It's about distinguishing between what we can influence, our thoughts and actions, and what we cannot, such as fate or the opinions of others. By doing so, Marcus exemplifies a perspective that turns letting go into a source of strength rather than weakness. Marcus Aurelius's personal reflections on mortality and loss. In Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, there's an often repeated acknowledgement of mortality as an unavoidable truth woven into the fabric of life. He viewed mortality not as a source of despair, but as a reminder to cherish the present and to accept the natural flow of existence. To him, understanding that life is transient could foster a sense of peace rather than anxiety. He believed that recognizing death as part of nature's order helps to diminish the fear surrounding it, making it easier to accept loss when it comes. For Marcus, contemplating death was a way to clarify what truly matters, stripping away superficial concerns and emphasizing virtues like wisdom, patience, and humility. His reflections reveal a deeply personal attitude towards loss. When loved ones or friends passed away, Marcus often turned inward, reminding himself that attachment to external things is fleeting and ultimately beyond our control. Instead of clinging to fear or denial, he practiced a form of mental detachment rooted in acceptance. This isn't cold indifference, but an acknowledgement that life's precious moments come with the ever-present shadow of impermanence. He wrote about how embracing loss with calmness is a sign of strength, and understanding that everything, including our loved ones, is temporary. It's a gentle call to cherish relationships while they last, knowing that absence and death are simply part of the bigger picture. Marcus's own experience with loss influenced his philosophical outlook profoundly. His reflections show a man who has wrestled with grief but strives to achieve serenity through rational thinking. He believed that death is an inevitable part of nature's cycle and that suffering is often amplified by resisting it. Instead, he advocates for surrendering to the natural order, seeing death as a transition rather than an end. This perspective helps him foster resilience, an inner stability that survives the loss of friends, family, and even oneself. For him, letting go isn't about forgetting or denying pain. It's about recognizing the transient nature of our attachments and developing a mindset anchored in acceptance. In practical terms, Marcus's teachings suggest that by contemplating death regularly, we can live more fully and with greater clarity. Knowing that all things pass away encourages a focus on the present moment and the moral virtues we can practice today. His reflections on mortality serve as a quiet reminder that suffering often diminishes when we acknowledge its inevitability and choose to accept what we cannot control. Ultimately, his personal reflections encourage a gentle surrender, letting go of the illusion of permanence to find peace amid the impermanence of life. the concept of inner peace through detachment. In the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, letting go is not about abandoning responsibility or care, but about cultivating a mindset of detachment from external circumstances. To him, the universe is vast and unpredictable, and human life often sways like a leaf in the wind. By accepting this nature of constant change, one can find a sense of inner peace that is not dependent on the fluctuating world around us. The idea is to recognize what lies within our control, our thoughts, judgments, and responses, and what does not, events, other people's actions, and natural forces. When we free ourselves from obsessing over the uncontrollable, we cultivate a calm that remains steady even amid chaos. Marcus emphasized that attachment to material possessions, status, or fleeting pleasures leads only to suffering. He believed that true tranquility emerges from internal resilience, from mastering the mind enough to remain unruffled by external losses or setbacks. For example, he wrote that losing wealth or reputation shouldn't disturb us if we see these as external and transient. Instead, we should focus on our virtue and moral character, which are within our power. Practicing this form of detachment, then, is a continuous act of reminding oneself that happiness isn't dependent on external validation, but rather on inner harmony. To fully embrace this approach, he suggested viewing external events through a lens of rational acceptance. By imagining worst-case scenarios and mentally rehearsing overcoming them, a person can diminish emotional reactions when adversity strikes. Marcus often reflected that a person who can detach emotionally from things that do not truly define their essence, like fame or possessions, can maintain an inner peace that no external event can shake. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or cold, but rather developing a perspective that allows one to remain centered. Over time, this attitude cultivates resilience, making life's inevitable hardships less disruptive and more opportunities for practice. Ultimately, the lesson lies in understanding that attachment fuels desire and suffering, while letting go fosters peace and clarity. Marcus Aurelius's wisdom encourages us to practice detachment gently, not as a way to suppress emotions, but as a means of gaining clarity over what truly matters. By letting go of the illusion that external things can bring lasting fulfillment, we free ourselves from unnecessary turmoil. This perspective turns life's inevitable ups and downs into a dance of acceptance, an enduring calm that resides within even when circumstances fluctuate wildly. Practical practices for letting go in Marcus Aurelius's writings. Marcus Aurelius's writings offer a wealth of insight on the art of letting go, grounded in Stoic philosophy. One key practice he advocates is the conscious recognition of what lies within our control versus what does not. By constantly reminding ourselves that external events are outside our influence, we gradually diminish our attachment to outcomes. In his meditations, Aurelius urges us to accept fate calmly, understanding that resistance only fuels internal disturbance. For example, he writes about viewing hardships as opportunities to practice virtue, rather than obstacles to be overcome or resented. This shift in perspective is a practical way to release attachment to specific results and rather focus on how one responds. Another practice involves the deliberate reflection on impermanence. Aurelius frequently emphasizes the fleeting nature of life and possessions, encouraging us to contemplate mortality and change regularly. He suggests that by doing so, we become less invested in superficial desires and more capable of appreciating what truly matters. A famous paraphrase of his stands out: "Remember that everything you own will someday be lost," which might seem like a stark reminder, but actually serves as a gentle nudge to focus on internal virtues rather than external validations. It's a practical reminder that our grip on material things and even relationships can loosen without loss of inner peace, as long as we are rooted in the present. Practicing detachment in daily life is also a cornerstone of Aurelius's approach. He advises us to observe our passions and emotional reactions, acknowledging them without judgment. When feelings of anger, frustration, or envy arise, acknowledging these feelings without clinging to them helps in releasing their hold. In one passage, Aurelius suggests that we shouldn't be disturbed by loss, suffering, or even death because they are natural parts of the universe. Instead, He recommends mental exercises like imagining losing what we cherish or practicing voluntary discomfort. These exercises serve to desensitize us to external disturbances, fostering resilience, and letting go of attachment to comfort or specific desires. Lastly, Aurelius emphasizes the importance of focusing on our duty and ethical principles rather than fleeting passions or external outcomes. When we center our actions on maintaining integrity and fulfilling our responsibilities, we free ourselves from obsession with success or failure. He frequently urges to align actions with reason and virtue rather than transient emotions or external praise. This internal discipline helps build a mindset where letting go becomes natural, because one's sense of worth and purpose isn't tied to external validation. All these practices, rooted in mindfulness and disciplined reflection, create a resilient mindset capable of embracing change and relinquishing what no longer serves inner tranquility. The universal relevance of letting go in contemporary life. Many people grapple with the concept of letting go, often seeing it as a sign of weakness or abandonment. However, throughout history, thinkers like Marcus Aurelius have emphasized that release is actually an act of inner strength. Aurelius, a philosopher and Roman emperor, often reflected on the importance of not clinging to possessions, emotions, or even intractable expectations. His writings remind us that holding on to things, whether past grievances, ambitions, or even our own identities, can hinder growth and peace. This timeless lesson remains highly relevant today, where the fast pace of life and constant bombardment of information and distractions make it easy to become entangled in unproductive attachments. In contemporary society, the need to let go manifests in many areas of life. People struggle with burnout caused by the relentless pursuit of success, materialism, or social validation. The pressure to hold on to ideals or relationships that no longer serve us can be exhausting and counterproductive. Marcus Aurelius' approach encourages a shift in perspective. Instead of fighting to keep everything intact, we can practice acceptance and adaptability. For example, shedding toxic relationships or relinquishing unrealistic expectations can lead to newfound clarity and emotional resilience. Echoing Aurelius' advice to accept things outside our control and focus on our own response instead. The wisdom of letting go also extends into mental health and well-being. In a world where mental clutter, anxiety, and compulsive thinking dominate, the act of releasing unnecessary burdens becomes a form of liberation. Marcus urged us to observe our thoughts dispassionately, recognizing that attachment to false beliefs or fleeting desires only causes suffering. Applying this in everyday life could mean releasing guilt over past mistakes or relinquishing the need for constant affirmation. By doing so, individuals unlock the ability to experience life more fully, unchecked by the weight of regret or fear. His teachings serve as a reminder that growth often requires pruning away what no longer aligns with who we are becoming. Ultimately, letting go isn't about giving up or resignation. It's a conscious act of prioritizing peace over transient attachments. Marcus Aurelius' insights remain remarkably relevant because they confront universal human tendencies: attachment, aversion, and the desire for permanence. In a world characterized by change and uncertainty, embracing the skill of release equips us to navigate life's ups and downs with equanimity. Whether confronting loss, disappointment, or inevitable change, understanding that letting go is a form of strength helps us build a more resilient, freer existence, something that many of us strive for in our current fast-moving, complicated lives. Usnavnoi, Rise Jill 7. In the philosophy of Marcus Aurelius, letting go is intricately tied to the Stoic idea of accepting what lies beyond our control. He emphasizes that much of our suffering stems from attachment to things that are transient or outside our influence. For Aurelius, acknowledging the impermanence of possessions, relationships, or even status helps us free ourselves from unnecessary anguish. His reflections suggest that by cultivating an attitude of detachment, without indifference, we preserve inner peace amid external chaos. This perspective encourages us not to cling too tightly to outcomes or possessions, but to appreciate their fleeting nature. Aurelius advocates for a mindful awareness of the present moment as a foundation for letting go. Instead of dwelling on past regrets or anxieties about the future, he urges us to focus on what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, and our responses. When faced with loss or disappointment, he recommends viewing these events as part of the natural order, echoing the idea that everything in life is change. In this way, letting go becomes a practice of aligning oneself with the flow of life rather than fighting against it or trying to impose our own will on what is uncontrollable. One specific example from his meditations highlights this attitude. Aurelius reminds himself that even loved ones are not truly ours to keep forever. He recognizes that attachment to loved ones must be balanced with an understanding of life's impermanence. To truly love, he suggests, is to accept that separation and loss can happen. This acceptance is not a resignation, but a form of moral strength, acknowledging reality as it is, without distortion or denial. Such perspective allows us to cherish moments without becoming distressed when they inevitably pass, fostering a sense of serenity that endures through life's inevitable changes. Ultimately, Aurelius' teachings on letting go serve as a guide to maintain virtue and peace in a restless world. By cultivating an inner resilience rooted in understanding and acceptance, he shows that we can navigate life's uncertainties with calm and dignity. Letting go, in his view, is not about giving up or apathy. Rather, it is about embracing reality with clarity and compassion. Holding on to our values while releasing attachment to fleeting things creates space for true contentment, an enduring strength that sustains us through life's many seasons. To conclude, Marcus Aurelius reminds us that embracing the inevitable changes of life with grace and acceptance is at the heart of true strength. He teaches that letting go of what we cannot control frees us from unnecessary suffering and allows us to focus on our inner virtues. In our daily lives, this means cultivating patience, humility, and resilience, even when circumstances feel overwhelming. As you reflect on his wisdom, consider how applying these lessons can bring more peace and clarity into your own journey. Remember, letting go isn't a sign of weakness, but a display of profound courage and self-awareness. If you found this perspective helpful, stay tuned for more insights into Stoic philosophy and how it can guide us through modern challenges. Your journey of growth and understanding continues here. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.